This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to The Holistic Survival Show with Jason Hartman. The economic storm brewing around the world is set to spill into all aspects of our lives. Are you prepared? Where are you going to turn for the critical life skills necessary to survive and prosper? The Holistic Survival Show is your family's insurance for a better life. Jason will teach you to think independently, to understand threats, and how to create the ultimate action plan. Sudden change or worst case scenario, you'll be ready. Welcome to Holistic Survival, your key resource for protecting the people, places, and profits you care about in uncertain times. Ladies and gentlemen, your host, Jason Hartman.
It is my pleasure to welcome Cass Sunstein to the show, and he is the author of many, many books, including the one we're going to talk about today, which is entitled Look Again, The Power of Noticing What Was Always There. So, Cass, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Good. It's good to have you on. Tell us a little bit about your body of work, if you would, and then let's dive in deep to the book.
Okay. Well, my body of work has too many pages, and it has too many words, and it has too many volumes. That's what I'd say. But I've enjoyed every single one.
Yeah, good stuff. So noticing what was always there, tell us about that, if you would.
Okay, so the basic idea is fundamental to our species, and actually every species, is habituation, which means that people really show decreasing sensitivity to stimuli, which means if you go into cold ocean, maybe in Florida, the first minute is going to be really awful unless you're insensitive to cold. But the 10th minute will be completely fine, and you'll be asking your friends to come on in. If you go into a room that has smoke in the first minute, you might think, why have I gone into this smoky room? But after about 20 minutes, you will show decreasing sensitivity. On a vacation, the first day is going to be good. The second day is going to be really, really good, and it's going to be less amazing thereafter. That's because people habituate to the wonderfulness of vacations. And this is true for money, by the way. It's true for investments. It's true for everything.
Yeah, I guess the positive side, it's not really positive, but your last example about vacation, it reminds me of something I talk about a lot, which is hedonic adjustments, and how we just sort of become accustomed and our expectations get higher, ever higher and higher. So that's something we need to guard against, because it really precludes the idea of gratitude, which is an important factor in life, right?
Okay, that's great. So let's think of hedonic adjustment as being specified by the idea of habituation. So let's suppose you have a leg that doesn't work, and the first month is really terrible. You can't run anymore. But after a while, you will show hedonic adjustment, and the negative effect of a leg that doesn't work on your well-being will be a lot less than you anticipate. Or let's suppose that you gain a ton of money and you have a really nice place to live, and the economic situation you're experiencing is something that would have thrilled you 2 years ago. And now, after a while, that's basically life. One problem is habituation can make us too immersed really into the amazingness of our lives, so that things that we should be thrilled by and astounded by are things that we are just kind of nodding to. And I love your point about gratitude, because the reason gratitude works when it does is that it dishabituates. It takes us away from the thing that we're immersed in, and we say, how did I get so lucky as to? Now, the idea of gratitude rituals is a little too sentimental for my personal taste, but they really work. And the reason they work is exactly what you said, that they take adaptation to what we are experiencing and put a barrier between those things and us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I might be making a mistake here, but as you speak and, I look at the information about the book, I sort of want to place a value judgment on it. And that might be a mistake, or maybe it's a good thing. I'm not sure. But in some ways, this is good, right? Because progress would involve us getting to one plateau and then expecting more and expecting more. And that makes us move forward, right? But also it can keep us from being grateful for what we have. So how do we kind of reconcile this, Cass?
Okay, that's fantastic. So I'd say the main theme of the book is science. My co-author is a neuroscientist, and I play a scientist on TV, though I'm a lawyer. I'm keenly interested in scientific facts. So the main question is, with respect to things that are fantastically good, let's say a nice house, a nice relationship, the fact that we're not starving, how can we come to a big smile or a big sigh of relief that those things we happen to get lucky enough? And how can we dishabituate to things that are bad, like, let's say, cruelty at work or inefficiency at work, or let's say something that's not going so great in our town? People tend to habituate to these things, and that's not so great. A lack of freedom people can habituate to, a lack of economic opportunity people can habituate to, and how can we dishabituate? These are kind of scientific questions. On the value question, you're completely right that habituation, let's say, to something that's really good, so that we're not amazed by it anymore, can make us search for something different and even better. So if you're thrilled by your entry-level job for, let's say, 70 years, and you retire at 90 in your entry-level job, that's probably not a full life. To get spurred by the, let's say, tedium that habituation produces is a very good thing. With respect to the balance, I think we've given dishabituation short shrift, and that the evolutionarily mandatory phenomenon of habituation is something against which we should take a somewhat tongue-in-cheek stand, saying that all of us need to dishabituate and be able to see the pixie dust on the things we've taken for granted that are positive, and all of us need to dishabituate so we can see things that aren't so wonderful, even, let's suppose, in sunny climes, or even in amazing Massachusetts, where I'm right now, to see things that are not so good for what they are, and not as the furniture of our lives.
Yeah, that's a great point. So it makes me wonder, and I don't know if you discussed this, but is this a survival mechanism in some way? Did we evolve this way for a reason? Is there, tell us about a theory on that.
Okay, completely. So let's take your great ancestors, who happen to be mine too, so we're related, hi cousin. And that's because our ancestors were not as cultured as we are. They didn't speak, they could swim, and our ancestors were extremely attentive to change. They'd start swimming really fast. If things were constant or changing slowly, they'd stay stationary. Those are unicellular organisms that are all of our ancestors, and that's evolutionarily a good thing, because if you are a unicellular organism, or if you're, let's say, in ancient times in a hunter-gatherer society, if things are constant or staying slowly, there's no surprise signal, steady, it's okay. But if you just hear instead a roar of an elephant or see a shadow of a predator, then the surprise signal kicks into the brain and you run. And that suggests that there's limited mental bandwidth for knowing what to do in a moment. And if something is novel on the scene, that surprise signal our brain offers us is extremely adaptive. If we didn't have the surprise signal, or if we had the surprise signal all the time, things would go, as they say, south.
Yeah, I remember learning a long time ago about maybe this is more your co-author's area, but about the reticular activating system, and that's the system in our brain that keeps out the trivial information, right? And makes us focus hopefully on what's important, right? We've got to have a filter because there's way too much stimulation coming in all the time. And folks listening, it's very easy to just do this experiment. Just sit outdoors, ideally sometime, and just really listen. There's a lot more sound, especially in a place like Florida, where you've got birds and insects and everything here. There's a lot more going on than you're paying attention to. I remember, and this maybe speaks to the gratitude thing, one day, I was messaging someone when I lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. I was messaging one of my remote workers in Canada, and she lived in Alberta. It was a voice message. And she said, "Oh, wow, that's so nice to hear all the birds chirping in the background, Jason." And I thought, I'm not even paying attention to the birds chirping. I didn't even notice them. But she noticed because it's the deathly cold of winter where she is, right? No birds. But in Arizona, we had the birds. So this filtering mechanism is what you were alluding to. Can you tell us more about that and how to use it better?
Yeah, so that's an incredibly perfect example where if you're hearing birds all the time, you might even not hear birds at all. And if you hear the birds not at all and then hear the chirping, you might think, that's really nice. Where is that coming from? That's perfect. Let's talk about the brain in a moment, and let's just start kind of more qualitative. That if you are hearing things in your room that are steady or constant. And I have I think a heater on right now, but I didn't notice it except for our exchange just now. I
Yeah.
actually didn't notice it at all. My brain is filtering it out because, and this is evolutionarily a very good thing, my limited, in my case, very limited mental capacity is being directed to our conversation and not to sounds that I'm used to, and therefore I needn't be concerned about. The focus we have in our book and that I would place here is on the amygdala, which is a part of the brain that fires when there's emotional arousal. And that means that the amygdala might be triggered, for example, by a taboo or by a threat. And I'll give you an example from our own research done by, in this case, by my co-author, Tali Sharot, that if people are incentivized to lie in a setting where lying is kind of remunerative, they'll get money if they lie. They will lie. People will lie. But for their first lie, the amygdala in the brain is firing. It's issuing a loud, no, we don't lie. And people are agitated by that. But as the day goes on, the amygdala starts to quiet. And then that red light it's giving inside the human brain starts to turn yellow and then green. By the end of the day, the amygdala is saying, oh, I guess we lie. And the weakening of the amygdala's reaction is associated with more and bigger lies. This is a lab experiment, but it's suggestive of your point about filtering in, filtering out. So it's going after the part of the brain that filters in, saying attention, Achtung. And that will quiet if the behavior is repeated, which means that there will be decreasing sensitivity. This bears on risk taking, by the way, economic and otherwise, where people take a lot of risks after a while. It's just not registering for them. And that can be good if they're risks with high expected values, but they can be not so good if they're losing more and more money.
It kind of simplistic, maybe cliche on that is that people who lie all the time just believe their own lies after a while. And that sort of speaks to that, I think, right? That it just gets easier to just lie more and more, right?
Okay, that's great. And as you said it, my initial reaction was that the phenomenon of lying all the time is weakening of the moral, let's say, taboo in the head because of habituation. But I think what you said is actually deeply true. And let's go at it from another stream of research. It's called the illusory truth effect, where if you hear, I hadn't thought of this, by the way, until you said it, though, so particular thanks. So the illusory truth effect is in our book. The illusory truth effect means if you hear a lie a couple of times, you tend to believe it. It's a very powerful effect, where if people hear something said twice, let's say Tom Brady is the second greatest quarterback of all time, that's because Patrick Mahomes has passed him, which means he's the second greatest. I just lied twice. I'm a big Tom Brady fan. Mahomes is fantastic. He's not there yet. But having said it twice, people who listen to it, sorry, everybody, will have a part of their mind that says maybe Mahomes has passed Brady. And that's a phenomenon. Lie twice or more, people find it easier to process it. The surprise signal isn't going off anymore, tend to believe it's true, which is why I think that what you said is right. If people lie a lot, it's often said they tend to believe their own lies. Why would that be? We now have what, in my mind, is a novel account. It's because people lie a couple of times, are showing the illusory truth effect with respect to their own statement. They've said it and heard it a few times, so they believe it, which is welcome to humanity. Easier, truthier.
Yeah. You keep making me think of depositions and legal proceedings and courtroom testimony, because I think part of it, Cass, might be that once the person speaks the lie and the world didn't end or they didn't get called out on it, they just kind of keep doing it, right? And it's pretty interesting stuff.
And their own moral horror, if it's that. I mean, I had a friend a number of years ago who cheated on his taxes. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he cheated on his taxes surprised me. The fact that he talked a lot about cheating on his taxes shocked me.
Not a good idea.
Well, it was a little not prudent. Yeah. But the fact that he talked so much about it was, I think, a product of exactly what you said, that he did it a lot, and the signal in his brain that this is morally not a good idea, as well as a
Just
very risky
turn down.
to have. Yeah. So he was like, he had habituated not only to lying, but to lying to the government.
Yeah, wow, that's risky. You know, the IRS has whistleblower rewards, folks. So
Yeah.
don't be bragging about lying on your taxes if you're going to do it, but don't brag about it.
Don't do it.
So, you know, Cass,
Honesty with taxes. It's almost tax day. Honesty
yeah,
with taxes.
exactly, exactly. So, Cass, one area that I think this maybe changes for all of us is over the course of many years in our lives. You know, certainly the idea of a midlife crisis, right? We've all heard that. Movies have been made about it, books have been written about it. Countless marriages have ended because of it. Both men and women have midlife crises. Men, I think it's maybe more noticeable because they buy a sports car. Certainly both parties do. How does this play into that concept of different sort of decades of our lives, if you will?
Okay, great. So suppose we projected on a screen a cloud of colors and put in the middle something like a fixation point, something you could look at. It might be like a T or something. And you ask people to stare at the T. What will happen, this was discovered by a European a long, long time ago. What will happen is the colors will start to turn gray. And it's shocking. If you're really good at it, the colors will turn white. And this is in our book, the display of the visual illusion. That means you stop seeing colors if your head doesn't move. And that's a metaphor for midlife crisis, where it seems to be, the data suggests, happening all over the world, not like newly necessarily. We don't know that, but we know it's happening all over the world. It happens at different ages, sometimes in some countries 40s and some 50s and some 60s. And the hypothesis about why it happens is that when you're, let's say you're 50 something, you have a good job or a decent job, and your family is your family, and you have a place to live. You're not on the streets, and the colors have turned gray. You don't see colors anymore. And that is the kind of phenomenology of the midlife crisis, where the sports car guy or the romantically inclined married woman, maybe, or guy, they are seeing gray and they need colors. And that's suggestive that while people really care about having a happy life, they want their life to have meaning, they also need their life to have color. And there are ways of getting color without having a crisis, but people sometimes go into crisis because the only color they see is gray.
Before I let you go, Cass, please tell us how we can be better at seeing colors and looking at life through new eyes. And as I have grown from living in poverty as a child, pretty much, to being very successful as an adult, you know, I'm noticing that about myself. You know, nothing really like amazes me anymore. And if you think of that great Andrew Lloyd Webber piece in Evita, you know, nothing can thrill you, nothing fulfills you. Maybe that's not from Evita, but anyway, one Andrew Lloyd Webber piece. It's really good lyric because it speaks to that. How do we value the world? I mean, after I read Walden by Thoreau, you know, that made me really try to appreciate more of these just little things that just happen all around us that we don't appreciate normally. Well, at least I didn't.
No, completely. So a hero of mine is Julia Roberts, not only because she's a really good actor, but she was interviewed a while back and said, "What's your perfect day?" And she said, "I get up and I make breakfast for my kids, and then I get ready for lunch, and I can have lunch with someone I like, and then I get ready to get my kids." And then she stops herself. She says, "It's boring." But because of my job, I'm an actor, I go away for weeks and I come back and it's surrounded by pixie dust. It resparkles. So the point is, for people like you and me, you know, if you're doing well, and obviously you are, I have an office and I have a job and I'm not struggling, but to see things that are, well, I'm struggling with my new book, but in general, not struggling. You can have the pixie dust or the resparkling if you take some kind of break. Now, it can be a literal break or it can be a psychological break. You know, when you wake up from a dream in which you lost your job or something terrible happened. I had one last night, by the way. I had a job about some health problem, a dream, a bad dream. And then I woke up and I didn't just think it's so lucky that I'm good at health. I felt it. And to dishabituate imaginatively or literally by taking breaks, that can bring colors back.
Yeah, I think that's very, very good advice. Cass, before we wrap it up, are there any questions I didn't ask you or anything you just want to share with the audience on either this book or any of your other work?
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. And thank you for the completely amazing questions. I'm very grateful. I guess question I ask is, what's your favorite chapter of the book? And I would say my favorite chapter of the book involves vacations and the fact that 43 hours in is the high point of the vacation.
43 hours. Okay. Yeah.
That's the magic point.
Okay.
And that's because after 43 hours, the colors are a little less bright. The champagne is a little less amazing. The hotel room is a little less surreal. And that tells us something about a challenge we all face and also an opportunity we all face. To be in a place that's good or very good or beautiful. It's those things, even when we've stopped noticing. And let's make a pact to have that 43-hour period where we're going to be.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. Cass, give out your website. The book is available in all the usual places as well as all your other books. Do you have a website you want to share?
Well, my favorite website is the Social Science Research Network. Isn't it everybody's favorite website? And if you put my name in it, which right now is Cass Sunstein, and I expect that's what it's going to remain, you'll find all sorts of papers, only 80% of which are boring.
Yeah, I love it. That's very funny. Good stuff. Well, Cass Sunstein, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.